In the late 11th century, Latin Christendom launched the Crusades, a series of wars aimed at freeing the Holy Land from Muslim control. Several factors motivated this movement. In 1070, the Ottomans took control of Jerusalem from Egypt, leading to reports of persecution of Christians visiting the holy sites. Additionally, the Byzantine Empire's weakening after the schism of 1054 allowed Turkish expansion into Eastern Europe. Certain Italian cities, like Genoa, Pisa, and Venice, sought economic gains through trade in the Eastern Mediterranean. Pope Urban II played a decisive role by preaching the First Crusade at Clermont in 1095, envisioning it as a holy war to save Europe, the Byzantine Empire, and unite Christians under the leadership of the Catholic Church. The First Crusade lasted from 1096 to 1099. Pope Urban called for the Christian armies to depart in August 1096, but some peasants couldn't wait. Stirred by religious fervor and a plenary indulgence, about 12,000 peasants from France and 9,000 from Germany set out earlier. They reached Constantinople, where Byzantine Emperor Alexius I provided ships, but the peasant soldiers chose to proceed alone. Tragically, they faced a massacre by Turkish archers led by Sultan Khalid Arslan on October 21, 1096, at Dracourn. Meanwhile, feudal knights gathered in France, and one prominent figure was Godfrey of Bouillon, Duke of Lorraine. The knights and supporting infantry made their way to Constantinople, where Alexius, fearing their presence, hurried them across the straits in early 1097. The Crusaders' opponents, the Turks, were divided and engaged in other operations to the east. The Crusaders moved south along the Mediterranean coast for resupplying from the sea and were joined by Italian Norman forces under Titus. On May 6, Godfrey and his men reached Nicaea. The force was strengthened by the addition of Raymond of St. Giles, Count of Toulouse and Marquis of Provence, Bohemond of Taranto, Titus' uncle, Robert, Duke of Normandy, son of William the Conqueror, and Stephen, Count of Blois and Chartres. On May 21, they defeated Turkish forces under Arslan, forcing them to withdraw. The Crusaders then besieged Nicaea, but their attempts at mining under one of the main towers were unsuccessful. The appearance of a Byzantine fleet off Nicaea convinced the leaders to surrender on June 19, 1097, to the Byzantines. The Crusaders were eager for plunder, but Emperor Alexius persuaded their leaders with gold and provided food for the soldiers. After 2 weeks, the Crusaders continued their journey southward in two separate armies led by Bohemond and Raymond of Toulouse. On July 1, at dawn, the Turks attacked Bohemond's camp on the plains of Dorylaeum, present-day Eskişehir. Bohemond bravely defended against the Turks for 6 hours until Raymond arrived, and together, the Christian forces decisively defeated the Turks, capturing their camp and Arslan's treasury. In November 1097, the Crusaders reached Antioch, a wealthy and well-fortified city governed by Yoghi. They secured the nearest port, St. Simeon, with the arrival of 13 ships from Genoa, bringing men and supplies. The Crusaders also defeated a Muslim relief force from Syria. In early February, after facing defections and worsening conditions, they defeated a second Turkish relief force. English ships arrived from Constantinople in March, carrying siege machines. Despite another Turkish relief force approaching, the Crusaders managed to capture Antioch only on June 3. The Ottomans arrived several days later, finding the Christians in control of the city. After an unsuccessful attempt to take the city by storm, the Ottomans resorted to besieging the Christians, hoping to starve them out. However, on June 28, in a daring move, the entire Christian army sallied forth from Antioch and defeated the Ottomans. After a 6-month respite, the Crusaders resumed their march in mid-January 1099 towards Jerusalem, the most sacred city for Christians, believed to be the site of Christ's death and resurrection. Jerusalem was under Muslim rule by the Fatimid Caliphate of Cairo. The Crusaders marched around 400 miles south from Antioch along the eastern Mediterranean coast through Sidon, Acre, and Caesarea until they reached Jerusalem on June 7, 1099. During the siege of Jerusalem, Duke Godfrey led around 13,000 men, including 1,300 knights, while the Fatimid governor of Jerusalem, Emir Iftikhar ad-Dawla, commanded around 20,000 defenders. The defenders had poisoned nearby wells and cisterns, and the oppressive heat posed a challenge for the Crusaders. Despite these obstacles, they knew they had to act swiftly. On June 12, they attempted an assault but were easily repelled due to a lack of sufficient scaling ladders and war machines. However, on June 17, 6 supply ships arrived at the port of Jaffa, which had been abandoned by the Egyptians. This provided the Crusaders with the materials needed to construct numerous mangonels, scaling ladders, and 2 large wooden siege towers. On the night of July the 13th to the 14th, the Crusaders bravely faced defensive fire to push the towers against the city walls. On July 15th, Duke Godfrey led the attackers in one of the towers over a wooden drawbridge, while other Crusaders used scaling ladders in a well-coordinated attack. Many of the Muslims sought refuge in the El Oqsa Mosque. Tancred, One of the Crusader leaders assured them that their lives would be spared and even gave them his banner as proof. After taking control of Jerusalem, the Christian forces unleashed a brutal and horrifying wave of violence against the Muslim population, showing no mercy to men, women, or even children. The estimated death toll from this rampage of destruction reached as high as 70,000 people. Muslims were beheaded, shot with arrows, thrown off towers, tortured, and even burned alive. The Jews residing in the city faced a similarly grim fate. They were rounded up and herded into a synagogue, which was then set on fire, resulting in the burning deaths of those inside. The Christian victors, driven by a bloodlust, eventually made their way to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, a site believed to have once contained the body of Jesus Christ after the crucifixion, where they offered their thanks to what they believed to be the God of mercies for their victory. On August 2, 1099, Duke Godfrey led a force of 10,000 crusaders in the Battle of Ascalon, against an Egyptian relief force of 50,000 soldiers under Emir al-Afdal. The Egyptian forces relied heavily on fanaticism and shock action, but they were at a significant disadvantage compared to the heavily armored and well-armed crusaders. A well-executed cavalry charge by the Christians resulted in an overwhelming victory. Despite their initial success in capturing Jerusalem and establishing the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem in 1099, it lasted only for 50 years, until 1148. The decline of the Latin Kingdom was partly attributed to the death of Godfrey of Bouillon, who was a respected figure known as the defender of the Holy Sepulchre. He refused to take the title of king in a city where Christ had suffered wearing a crown of thorns. The subsequent rulers were not as capable, leading to the kingdom's gradual weakening. The Crusades continued for over a century with numerous attempts, but ultimately, they failed to maintain lasting control over the Holy Land. By the end of the 12th century, the Muslims regained control of the region, and the dreams of the Crusaders to establish a lasting Christian dominion in the Holy Land had come to an end.